When I turned 18, my parents gave me a tough choice. Either I start paying rent, or I have to move out. It wouldn't seem so strange if it weren't for one but. My older brothers and sisters lived in the same house for free. I was the youngest of 4 children, and unlike them, I didn't have the opportunity to stay with the family without paying. I've always considered our family to be quite friendly. We had never lived in luxury, but we had enough for everything we needed. My parents constantly talked about family values and how important it is to help each other. However, as it turned out, for some reason these values did not apply to me. I had just graduated from high school and was preparing to go to college. I didn't have any money. Everything I earned from part-time jobs went to study materials, college savings, and some personal expenses. But my parents said that from now on I have to pay for my accommodation. "You're an adult now, it's time to learn to be independent," my father said, while my brothers and sisters silently watched this conversation. They did not interfere, did not offer their help, did not ask questions. They were comfortable the way they were. I tried to argue by asking the obvious question, "Why don't they pay?" My mother's answer shocked me. "They're older, they already have their own lives, it's harder for them." One of my brothers, who was 26, did not work, lived at home and played video games all day long. When my sister was 24, she was also in no hurry to move out and didn't pay a penny. But for some reason, no one cared. At first, I tried to find a compromise. He offered to help around the house, take on more responsibilities, but they all rejected it. There were 2 options left. Either I pay or I leave. There was no choice. I left. I rented a tiny room in a shady neighborhood, got 2 jobs to make ends meet. It was hard, but I managed. I had to go to college in the evening because I worked during the day. Sometimes it hurt me, because I was the youngest, and I could use some support. But the more time passed, the more I realized they were just using me. Several years have passed. I've already graduated, got a good job, and moved into a normal apartment. Communication with my parents came to naught. I saw no point in keeping in touch with those who treated me so unfairly. One day the bell rang. It was the mother. She spoke with tears in her voice. "It's hard for us. We don't have enough money. Your brothers and sisters still live at home. Your father is ill." I listened in silence. Then she asked me to help, because a family should support each other. I replied simply, "You're right. A family should support each other. It's a pity that this rule didn't work for me," and hung up the phone. Sometimes I feel like I've been cruel, but then I remember when I was 18 I was faced with a choice. Either pay or end up on the street. And I understand that I just learned to live the way they taught me. I've often wondered exactly why I ended up in this situation. Maybe my parents saw me as the most capable of the children, someone who could really cope with difficulties. Or did they just want to get rid of me as an extra burden? These thoughts haunted me. I compared myself to my brothers and sisters. They lived in comfort, not thinking about the future, while I worked day after day, building my life from scratch. The first years of independent living were a real challenge. I worked as a waiter during the day and a cashier at night, sleeping for 3 or 4 hours, trying not to go crazy with fatigue. Sometimes I didn't even have enough money for food, so I had to save money and eat instant noodles and bread. However, at the same time, I felt free. I was no longer dependent on the unfair conditions that my family imposed on me. Over time, I found a stable job, was able to afford a better apartment, and began living the life I dreamed of. I met new people and made friends who supported me more than my family. At some point, I realized that family is not always those with whom you are related by blood, but those who really care about you. Years passed, and then one day my older brother contacted me. He said that his parents were now in a difficult situation. Their financial situation had worsened. His father had lost his job, and now the house was about to be taken away for debts. He asked me to help, to invest money to save the house. I sighed. It was the very house where I was deprived of support and driven to nowhere. And now I had to save him? I asked a simple question. "Do the others help?" My brother hesitated. "Well, they also have difficulties. You know how hard it is now." I realized that again, they want to shift responsibility to me. And I replied, "I'm sorry, but I'm having difficulties too. As you said, everyone has to handle themselves." I didn't get any more calls after that. I felt strangely relieved. I finally put an end to this story. I was no longer a kid who could be used. I have become a man who decides his own fate. Now I have my own family, my wife and son. I know one thing. I will never put my child in front of the choice that my parents made for me. I have learned not only independence, but also the importance of being fair. I'm happy that I was able to break out of this circle. Sometimes I still remember the past, but now it has no power over me. Now my life is my rules, my family, my love, and my freedom. I realized one thing. Justice is not always forgiveness. Sometimes justice is just about leaving the past behind and moving on. And I'm moving.